Welcome back. Today let's improve our player by creating a new attack state complete with animations and sound effects. Hi, my name is Michael and welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. We are learning how to build a top-down 2D game that features action, adventure, and RPG mechanics all in Godot 4 using GDScript. Okay, first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to import the new assets that are going to be required to update this, and we're going to create a new folder, a new place to put some audio files. So let's go ahead and let's make the new folder now. So underneath our player, we've already got sprites and scripts. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it audio. Okay. And then let's go ahead and open our sprites folder in the file manager. And then go ahead and find your downloads, and we've got a couple items that you're going to want to grab, and these are available on my itch.io page that will be linked in the description. So there's the attack sprite, player sprite 2, and the shadow. Go ahead and put all of those into your sprites folder in the project. And then I'm just going to go ahead and navigate in my files here and open the audio folder. And let's put this sword swoosh wave file in there. Okay, we should have everything we need once we go back to our project. Give it a second to load the files. There we go. Okay, so now we need to update our player to use the new sprite sheet. Now the new sprite sheet changed a little bit, and so we're gonna have to update our animations as well because I changed the order of the frames and added some new ones. And I did that mainly so that the process of editing the sprite sheet would be a little bit easier for me. So sorry about that, but let's go ahead and do it. So we select our sprite here, make sure you're in the player scene. And then let's just find player sprite 2 and just drag and drop it onto the texture in the inspector. Now we need to update the frames. There are 16 horizontal frames and 3 vertical frames in this one. So once you update that, your player should look correct again. Now let's select our animation player and let's look at the idle down animation. This one didn't change really, so it's going to work just fine, but I want to actually update something. I want to make all of these animations use a different update mode. This will make it easier to change them in the future. So I deleted that middle frame. By default, when you have a sprite, you update the frame with this discrete option, and that can be preferable in a lot of cases, but I'm going to go ahead and choose continuous. And what continuous will do is it will kind of interpolate between. So when it gets to the middle of the animation, you can see it's actually picking up the second frame of the animation automatically. And that's just going to make it, if we do that with all of our animations, then it's going to make it easier to update them. So as we go through, update the idle side, let's change this to continuous. And then if the idle side doesn't look correct, that's because we need to update our frame values. So idle side is now, starts at frame 6 and then goes to frame 8. There we go. And then idle up. We'll do similar things here. And idle up is going to be frames 3 to 5. And if you wanted to just keep them on discrete, then you just make sure that your middle frame also gets updated to frame 4. Let's update the walk animation. So walk down, set it to continuous. Walk down is going to be 9 through 12. Walk up. Oh boy, if I could select those. Let's delete those guys. Set it to continuous. This is going to be 13 through 16. Okay. And then walk side. It's going to be 17. Actually, this one, I guess, didn't need to change either. 17 through 20. So that's all good. Okay, let's go ahead and test our game. Make sure it still works. Make sure it still animates in each direction. It looks like it does. Okay, so we've successfully updated our sprite. One other thing that you'll notice is I removed the shadow from my player sprite. That seemed like a pain to have in the sprite, and so I decided to remove it. You'll notice though one of the new textures that we brought in was the shadow texture. right? So in the inspector, and that's white. Don't worry, we'll get there in just a little bit. Okay, so next in our animation player, let's add the attack animations. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick idle down. I'm gonna click animation and duplicate that. We'll call this attack down. And the duration of the attack animation should be about 0.3. And we're gonna keep it on this continuous update mode so that we only have to edit 2 frames here. And the first frame in our attack down animation is going to be frame 21. And then the last one will be frame 23. And actually, I'm going to drag this in. I want it to just stay there for a little bit. Let's go ahead and play that. Okay, except we don't want it to ping pong. We want no looping at all. So make sure you click this until the looping is back to the little white arrow. So it should only play once. Okay, there's our attack down animation. Pretty simple. And then let's go ahead and duplicate this and create our other one. So we've got attack up. And let's see. Attack up is going to start on frame 24. And go to frame 26. Okay. Let's duplicate that to make the attack side. That's going to be 27 through 29. Okay, attack side. Okay, so we've got our 3 variations of attack animations set up. Looking good. Okay, so next, let's go ahead and create a new state for our player. We've got idle and walk. I'm going to just duplicate walk and rename it to attack. And of course, we're going to need a new script as well. So let's go down to our scripts. The idle state's the simplest one, I think. I'm just going to duplicate that and call it state underscore attack. Okay, so we've got a new script here. Let's open that guy up. Make sure we change the class name so we don't get any compiler errors. And let's see, that's good. We're going to remove, well, we can leave this, but I'm going to actually just rename this to attack right now. We know that we're probably going to do that, right? And then I'm going to remove this line of code. We can go ahead and set the velocity to 0. And there we go. Okay. So that's a pretty simple little state there. Before this state's going to do anything though, now that we've got it applied, right? We need to, well, we need to do one other thing. We need to drag our script onto the attack state. Otherwise it was using walk, I think, whatever we duplicated, right? So now it's using the proper script. Okay. But before our player can use this state, we need to update a few other things because we're not going to be able to switch to it. So we need to add a little bit of code to our state, and we need to hook it up to our idle and walk states. So let's open up our idle state script. Okay. Now in here, we're going to add a reference to our attack state by holding control and dragging that into our code here. Okay. Make sure that we tell it it's a state. So we've got attack here in our idle state. And then we need some code in our handle input so that when the player presses a button and he's idling, then he'll do something. And this is what the code's going to look like. So if you've got our event that gets passed in here, right? If it is action pressed, and then actually, oh, we don't have a button here to use. Okay. So I forgot to do this step, I guess, but let's go ahead and let's go to our project settings, go to the input map, and we need to add a new action. We'll call it attack. Add it. Now, I don't know what people want to use. If we're using the arrow keys to move, I'm going to just use Z, maybe, the Z key for attack. And then you can go ahead and add another one if you've got a joypad set up. So I use my PlayStation controller. And it's going to be cross on the PlayStation. Okay, that's good. I've got an attack action, so I can now provide that here in my script. Okay, so if the player presses attack while we're in the idle state, then we're just going to return the attack state. Okay, pretty cool. So that's all the code we need to be able to do that. We do need to do this in our walk state as well, because if the player's walking and they press attack, right? We should do the same thing. We do also need to get a reference to our attack state in here so that that code can work. Okay. Now at this point, let's go ahead and just run our project and see what happens. So I should be able to move. There we go. It kind of worked. I attacked, but now he's stuck and I can't do anything else. And that's because we haven't finished our attack state. So let's look at our attack state. You'll notice in our other states, we had conditions to leave the state if they're pushing a button, etc. But in this case, we don't want the player to leave the attack state until the attack animation has completed or something along those lines, right? And there are a lot of ways we could do this. We could use timed values. We could check the animation, things like that. And actually, I like using the animation player, and that's going to at least introduce us to some new concepts that we can utilize. I'm first going to do one thing here. I'm going to add a new variable. Okay, this variable is going to be called attacking, and it'll be of type bool. Oh boy, except bool is spelled with a B. And I'm going to set it to false by default. Okay, so we've got this attacking variable, and what we're going to use that for is just kind of say like, yeah, are we still attacking? Or when we're not attacking, it will go to false. So when we enter the player state, we need to set attacking to true. Okay. This will make sense in just a moment here as we finish this code. Now we need a little function in this state to help us, and it's just going to be, we'll call it end attack. It doesn't return anything, and it's going to set attacking false. Okay. Now, in order to track our animator and respond to it, we're going to want to get a reference to it. So I'm going to go ahead and control drag the animator in, okay, into my script. And this animation player is of type animation player. And then I'm going to do the following. When we enter our attacking state and we play our animation, we also want to connect to a signal. And if you're not familiar with signals in Godot yet, the simplest explanation is a signal is something that emits and then other scripts can listen to it. So like the signal could be like, in this case, we're going to listen to a particular signal in the animation player. So let's go ahead and type it in. Animation player. And then there's a signal for animation changed, get next, finished is the one we want though. Okay, so that's a signal. So as soon as the animation that is currently playing finishes, this signal will fire off. And so we can connect a piece of code to that. And we have that end attack function that we created. So we're gonna just put the name of that function in here, end attack. Now we're gonna get an error if we don't update our end attack function, because when this signal fires, it also passes in a parameter. We're not going to use it, but I think it's the animation name. So I'm just going to put this here in my end attack script. And then in the future, we could use that if we needed to. But for now, we're just going to ignore it, but that'll avoid any compiler issues with running our game. So, okay, so once the animation finishes, it's going to say attacking is false. And then we're just going to go here into our process. We're going to say if attacking two equal signs for comparing, if it equals false, then we know that the attack has ended. And then we're going to do just one other check in here. Okay, so if, just like we were in the idle state, if there is a direction, or let's say there's not a direction first actually. So if the player direction is 0, meaning the player is not pressing any directions, then we will return the idle state. And I don't know if we have a reference to that up here. We don't. We have our walk state. So let's get a reference to our idle state in this code. Okay. Idle and walk are the two states we're going to reference here. And that's supposed to say vector 2. I made a lot of mistakes here. Okay, so there we go. If the player direction is nothing, then we'll return the idle state. Otherwise, we'll return the walk state. So then as soon as that animation finishes, this piece of code is going to get hit. And also in our process, we're setting the velocity to 0, so the player's not going to be moving while we're in our attack state. And I think that should give us quite a bit more functionality out of this state already, just doing that. Let's go ahead and test it and see if we can attack. There we go. And if I'm holding a direction, then he'll start walking when I'm done. And if I'm not, then he'll just start idling. Okay, that's pretty good. But we've got an error here, and I knew we were going to get this because I didn't add something. Let's look at the debugger. You see this state attack signal animation finished is already connected, because every time we enter the state, we're trying to connect to the attack. We could resolve this by checking if we're connected and not connect again. But actually, what I would rather do is in our exit function, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that. Instead of connecting to this, let's just disconnect. Okay. Because really, I don't want to be listening to this signal when I'm not in the state. That would be nice to just get that code to stop running. And then I'm going to go ahead and just for sanity, I'm going to set attacking to false. If for some reason we exit the attack state, we'll just set this to false. Okay. So now if we run again, we should clear up that error and it should still work. Yeah. There we go. So we don't have that error appearing in our debugger anymore. So we've got a working attack state, and we could stop here, but I'd like to kind of improve that attack state and make it look a little bit flashier and a little bit more exciting. We're going to make a few additions to our player here. Let's go into our sprite. Let's go to the 2D view. Okay. And we're going to add a child node to our Sprite 2D, and it's also going to be a Sprite 2D. I'm going to rename this Sprite, and I'll call it Attack Effect Sprite. I don't know, something like that. Okay. Now this, we've got a sprite for this, so we've got this attack sprite. You can see those little sword swooshes. Okay. Let's go ahead and drag that sucker on there, and let's extend the animation. There's only one row of frames, and there are 12. So let's set that to 12. So we're going to add this, and we're going to hook this up so that it plays when the player is attacking as well. We could have tried to do this as part of our player, but I want this to actually be offset a little bit, and rather than continuing to make the player sprite get bigger and bigger, we'll just add effects as layers on top. And this will also give us kind of some fun abilities if we want to later on. So now this new attack sprite, it needs its own set of animations. And so let's add a new animation player that's specific to this sprite. Okay, it's only going to animate the sprite. So I'm going to add, on my attack sprite, I'm going to add another child node. I'm going to add the animation player here. Okay, so it's going to be a child of the sprite that it's animating. That'll help keep it clear, I think. We need to make some new animations, and we'll have the same names, I think, just attack down and attack side and whatever, attack up. Let's start with the attack down. And this animation will be similar in length to our other ones, 0.3 seconds. And let's go ahead and add a frame from our attack sprite frame. Let's add this guy in here. Insert a key. So the first frame for attack down is 0, so that's good to go. And then I'm going to go over here and insert a key at the end, and we'll set this to 3. Okay, so we've got that, and let's go ahead and make this continuous. So if we play it, there's a nice little slashing effect. Now that we have our attack down, let's duplicate it and make our other two animations. So it'll be attack up and side. Attack up begins at 4. Goes to 7. Let's make sure that looks correct. Okay, slashed up. Let's duplicate that one more time. For some reason, whenever I want to duplicate my animation, I keep trying to click this, but it's right here. Okay, attack side. The first frame should be, let's see, 8 through 11. Okay, attack side. Now we also need to position these depending on the type of attack that we're doing, because you'll notice Let's just go to attack down. It's not quite right. It's actually pretty close, but it's not quite right. I would like that initial swipe right here to kind of begin where the sword is. So let me just grab my sprite and drag it down. Make sure I get the move tool to be able to do that. So it should be somewhere around about here. And let's put it to 10 pixels. Okay. Now we can go ahead and keyframe that position. We'll go ahead and say create. Okay, so there we go. We've got a position now for our down. We don't need to adjust that position. You could if you wanted to, but we're not going to. And then what I want to do is I want to go over here to edit, copy tracks, and I'm going to copy the position. Okay. Then we'll go to attack side, edit, paste tracks. This one's going to be 10 on the X and 0 on the Y. Okay. There we go. So it's kind of off to the side. And then let's go to attack up, paste tracks. And this one is -10 on the Y. Okay, there we go. Now before these animations will play, we need to play them with our attack state as well. So I'm going to go in here to our attack state, and I'm just going to add a reference to this new animation player. And obviously we can't have it have the same name, so I'm going to call it attack anim, maybe. And it's still a type animation player. Okay, then what we'll do here is right where we go play our player animation, we can go ahead and tell our attack anim to play lowercase p, I guess. And then we'll have it play attack underscore. We still need the player direction, right? We still have that direction component, but we can just grab that from our player since we have a reference to him. So we'll just grab the anim direction. Okay. Now that should make it so that it plays an attack animation. There we go. With it. Nice. And you can see the position is moving. We've got a few issues here. One is it's kind of on top of the player right there, and I don't really want that. That's fine when he's facing down, but not the other directions. But also, I mean, that thing is sticking around, right? We've got that little white swoosh that's sticking around no matter what. So let's go back here to our player, and we can handle pretty much all of this, I think, here with the animation player for this attack. So let's just go to attack down, and let's add a couple more keyframes that we're going to need here. If we select the sprite, there's some options that'll help us. So under visibility, there's an option to show behind parent, and we don't want that on this one. I'm going to just keyframe it as off. Okay, but let's put that keyframe at the very beginning of the animation to put our playhead at the beginning. And then one other thing that we need to do to handle the visibility is we need to go to our attack animation here, and let's add a keyframe for visible. So it's on, and then at the end, let's insert another keyframe and let's turn it to off. So then that means when it's done, it's going to turn off. Okay, let's go ahead and copy those tracks. So we've got the visible and the parent show behind. Let's copy those. Let's go to our other attack animations. Now attack side, we want show behind to be on, and then the visible is fine. Attack up, paste the tracks, show behind, put that on. And then we need to do one more thing here so that we don't still get stuck in some animation state where we're showing the animation. Let's go ahead and just make one more animation. I'll duplicate this and I'll call it no attack. And we're not actually going to call this animation anywhere. And in fact, I'm going to delete most of this stuff. We're just going to leave the visible, and we're just going to set that one to off. And then we'll just delete that second keyframe. Okay, so this animation will just turn the visibility off no matter what. That's all it really does. And then one last thing with this new animation we created is we'll check this little option to autoplay on load. So this will be the first animation that the sprite or the animation player will play with this sprite. So as soon as the game loads, it should disappear. Yep. Okay, no swoosh thing around our player. And then when we attack, there we go, it goes away. And you can see here that the swoosh is kind of behind his head, behind the player, unless we're facing forward, which is kind of the desired effect I was going for. So there we go. We've got some attack. We've got an extra bit of animation added there. And it's coming along quite nicely. There's maybe a couple things though that we can do to make this just a little bit better before we wrap up. So in order to wrap this up, I want to do 3 more things. Let's add some audio to our attack effect, and let's make it so that our player doesn't stop so abruptly when he's attacking out of a walk. And then we'll also add the drop shadow back in for our player. So let's start with the audio. I'm going to create a new node 2D within my player at the root level, and I'm just going to call this audio. This is maybe more organizational than anything else. Within this audio node, I'm going to add an audio stream player 2D. Now this will allow us to play sounds that can have kind of like a 2D effect applied to them. Now one way to do this would be to put the audio effect right on here on the stream and just tell it to play and play it in our animations, etc. But I want to be able to reuse this audio player. I don't want to end up with like 10 audio players to play 10 different sound effects when we could do it with just one. So the only other setting I'm really going to adjust on this audio player is this max polyphony. And if you look at the tooltip, it says the maximum number of sounds this node can play at the same time. Any additional sounds after this value reached will cut off the oldest sound. So I don't know what this needs to be. For now, we'll just set it to 4. So it can play, our player will be able to play up to 4 sounds at once. And then once a 5th sound is played, then the oldest one would stop playing. Now let's go into our attack state script and let's add some stuff here. So I want to do a couple things. I want to add an export variable. So we'll just say at export and then var attack underscore sound. And let's see, this is of type audio stream is what we want. Okay. And what export does, I'm gonna go ahead and save this, is it makes it so that when we select our node in the scene, right? I'm looking at here, the attack. We've got an attack sound field now, and it'll take any kind of audio stream. So we can just find the sword swoosh in our audio folder in the player, drag that onto the attack script. So then if you ever wanted to change the sound, you just change it there. You don't have to touch the script, right? So that's kind of handy. And then we also need to get a reference for our audio stream player. We'll just go ahead and drag that in there. And I'm just going to call it audio. Delete the rest of that name. And this is a audio stream player 2D. Okay. So pretty simply, we're just going to come in here, and another thing we'll do on enter is we need to set and play the sound. Since our audio stream player does not have an audio stream applied to it, we need to set that through script. So we'll say audio.stream, and we'll set it equal to the attack sound that we're going to add, right? That we're allowing the user to add. And then we'll just say audio.play. And actually, just for a little bit of fun, before we play, let's do one more thing. Let's go audio.pitch scale. So this will adjust it to be a higher or lower tone. And we don't want to do this too drastically. And we want to do it with a random number here. I'm going to do a random F. Okay. And actually, let's do this random F range. So this float can be anywhere from 0.9 to 1.1. So it's either going to be a little bit higher or a little bit lower, or maybe spot on to the original pitch, but somewhere in between. Okay, so that's just going to randomize the effect of it. Let's go ahead and play it. There we go. So now our player's got a nice attack, and you can see when we play it multiple times, sometimes it sounds just a little bit different. Adds a little bit of kind of, I don't know, organicness to that. Now, the other thing I said is let's make it so that the player doesn't just stop instantly when we attack from a walking state. And let's add another export variable that you can use to control this. Okay, and this time let's do something a little bit different. Let's do export underscore range. So this is kind of nice. This variable that we export is going to have a minimum and maximum range, as well as a slider that you can use to control it. So let's set the range up like so. First you give it a minimum, then a maximum, and then you can also provide, and I think this one's optional, but like an increment size, so 0.5. Okay, so this variable, we're going to call it decelerate speed, maybe, as a float, and we'll set it to 5 by default. Okay. Now let's go to our player, let's go to our process where we're setting our player velocity. Instead of setting it to 0, we're going to do this. Let's go player velocity minus equals. So we're going to subtract it by a specific amount, and that amount will be the player velocity times, and then we want the decelerate speed. But we also, because we're doing this over time, we need to multiply it by underscore delta. Okay. So now we're just going to subtract it by some amount of the player velocity over time. So when we run the project now and we go to attack, you see how he kind of gradually stops while he's going. Now, if we were to go back, and this is something fun that you can do, I'm going to leave my game running and I'm going to come over here, select my attack script, and see this decelerate speed's got this slider. I can put it to 20 and go back and see that's pretty much immediate. That's like an immediate stop. If we were to set this all the way to the minimum of 1 and try it again, he's just like super slidey. Okay, so you can kind of control this. I'm going to set it back to 5. I think that felt pretty good. Could be maybe a little bit quicker, I don't know, but I'm gonna leave it right there for now. Okay, so we've got all that set up. Now there's one last thing to do, and that's just to add the shadow back to our player. And let's just add a child node, and this will be a Sprite 2D. And I'm gonna go ahead and just put it underneath the player sprite, even though it doesn't need to be there. And I'm gonna call this shadow sprite. And this will just help keep it organized, and it should be below this. So the texture for our shadow sprite is this shadow PNG, and it's white, and you might be wondering why the heck I made it white, and there's a very good answer. There's a really nice functionality built into all of Godot sprites where you can use this modulate setting, and what this does is it'll change the color of the sprite by this amount, by this color. But you'll notice, let me go ahead and just do this real quick to the player sprite just to show an example. If we modulate the player sprite, if I set it to red, you notice it kind of makes everything darker, right? And it essentially darkens the sprite by that color that we're adding. Okay. So the color gets added to what's below it, and what that means is when you have white, anything that's white is going to be exactly the color that we modulate. So that way we can, if we make a nice white sprite, then you can recolor it to a very specific color, and you know it's going to look exactly like that. So I'll just set this to black, and then I'm going to go down here to the alpha, and I'm just going to drag this down to something, I don't know, maybe around 200 seems okay. And then we just need to do one more thing, and we need to select the show behind parent option. Okay, so it'll always be beneath the player. Now let's run our game. There we go. We've got a nice little drop shadow below the player. We've got a nice attack with sound effects and visual effects, and it's coming along quite nicely. So next time, hopefully we'll make it so that we can actually hit something with our sword. And thanks for joining me.